The Hidden Hindu, Book 1 of the Trilogy by Akshat Gupta, Chapter 3, Disconnected Disclosure. I don't understand what this man is saying, shouted Shahista, clearly frustrated. Om Shastri was silent for a moment and then, without warning, woke up from his narcotic stupor. His sudden return to consciousness shocked the team members, who thought they had ample time to deal with him. Shahista, who was sitting closest to Om Shastri, got alarmed and, while trying to distance herself from him, fell off the chair in surprise. All the others in the room stiffened. Shahistra's rational mind argued that this was impossible. It's not been even an hour. How did he get conscious? Never in her experience over 300 patients had a man woken up from his hypnotism so abruptly, without any sign of physical disturbance. Dr. Batra was equally stunned and disoriented. His knowledge of medicines told him that the patient could not regain consciousness in less than 8 hours of the injection given the dose. It had not even been an hour since Om was injected. This defied all the norms ever studied and practiced by Dr. Batra. LSD was horrified too, and was bad at hiding it. None of them had any clue what was going on. Om Shastri was looking at them without trying to get free of the shackles that constrained him. When he spoke, his tone was calm and peaceful. Why have I been brought here? What do you people want? He seemed disappointed. Dr. Shahistra didn't respond to Om Shastri's inquiry. She looked over at Dr. Srivansan across the room. Om also turned towards him. You are here because there are some answers we need. What do we want? Nothing but the information you possess, Dr. Srivansan, in his bossy tone. How much do you know about me? Om continued. Well, Mr. Shistri, not much for now, just that Om Shahistri is not the real name, that you know someone called Bandra Badur and Sanjay, and that you were Vidur and Vishnu Gupt, other fake names you used. Om Shahistri shut his eyes tightly, and a wave of pain and sorrow crossed his face. At this point, Dr. Srivansan, losing his control, said in an authoritative tone, I am Dr. Srivansan, R.A.O., a retired scientist from the National Institute of Science, Communication, and Information Resources. I am now leading this group. I know who you are, responded Om. Dr. Batra moved close to Om to inject him again. Om tried resisting initially and let out a scream. I am immune to midazolam, flunitrazepam, barbitrates, and amobarbital. This won't help you. These were Om's last words before losing consciousness again. Om's scream brought 2 guards running to hold him in place. Dr. Batra concealed his astonishment on hearing the names of the drugs and constituted the narcotic mixture and injected him once more. Om started feeling sleepy. Dr. Shahistra started in the direction of Om Shahistri to get on with hypnotizing him again. She sat comfortably in front of him and stared him in the eyes. Shahistra's beautiful eyes had the magic and the power to hypnotize any person. She didn't blink at all and spoke in a soothing voice. When she touched Om Shahistri on the shoulder, he felt limp and heavy. Dr. Srivansan registered these odd words in his mind. I know who you are. How? Dr. Srivansan wondered. Tej, is he ready to be questioned again? Dr. Srivansan inquired. Dr. Butcher checked some readings in a device and said, Not yet, sir. Meanwhile, LSD approached other teammates asking, What was he babbling? Sanskrit, said Primal. Primal, age 35, hailed from a village called Wadra in Maharashtra, where his father worked as a farmer. He was an introvert. He did his PhD in Indian history. His knowledge in his subject was immeasurable, but he lacked the guts to put it forth confidently. The reason for his lack of confidence was his stammering, which had been the biggest hurdle in keeping up with the others, and so he was often ignored. As a consequence of his silence, his presence and his absence were indistinguishable. Parimal, who was 2 inches short of 6 feet, creamy-skinned and handsome. He wore a checked brown shirt with a pair of black jeans and white sports shoes. He had coal-black eyes and hair in the same hue with some oil applied to it. Parimal was denied the importance he desired in the team, owing to the fact that his questions and suggestions were considered naive. Sanskrit. Who speaks Sanskrit in this century? LSD remarked in frustration. He, said Parimal, pointing towards Om Shatri. Yeah, but who in today's world has the time to understand his language? Wondered LSD. Me, came the answer from Parimal again. Shushan, said Abhilash to himself slowly. What? Asked LSD, overhearing Abhilash. Nothing, said Abhilash, bringing himself back. LSD answered, No, I heard you. Repeat the name this guy said minutes ago. Abhilash replied, Shushan. Yeah, that name. What is it? Tell me, LSD insisted. Parimal, too, joined the conversation. Shushan is a very rarely used name. As per my knowledge, Shushan was the name of a medic in the Ramayana who saved Lakshman, the younger brother of Lord Ram, in the battle of Ravana, the king of Lanka, by suggesting a herb called Sanjivani, which was found only in the Himalayas. Lord Hanuman was ordered by Lord Ram to bring Sanjivani, as advised by Shushan. Lord Hanuman, after reaching the Himalayas, could not make out the difference between Shanavani and other herbs, and so he lifted the entire mountain and flew back to Kanyakumari with it to let Shushan himself make the choice. Yes, I have seen the Hindu mythological picture of Hanuman flying with the mountain. Is that what you are referring to? Yes, but I don't remember the mention of Shushan's and in the Ramayana, said Abhilash. Everything is unusual about him, not even close to anything I have witnessed before, Dr. Shahista said, still lost in thought. She then turned to Dr. Srinivasan and asked politely, Sir, we should at least clearly know what we are dealing with. Everyone looked at Srinivasan, expecting a fair answer. This is what we are here for, retaliated their boss. So concentrate on your own work and get more out of him to help us understand what we are dealing with. Dr. Srinivasan glared at Shahista. That was rude of Shahista. That was rude, and Shahista didn't like that, and was evident from her expressions. Everyone went back to their task at hand. Parimal walked to Dr. Batra and asked frantically, Dr. Batra, are you, all right? Dr. Batra was clearly disturbed. He gathered himself and came up with a, huh? Yes. We, are not very well, acquainted, but we, are to work, as a team here. You seem a bit disoriented. Is everything, all right? Parimal repeated in an anxious tone. Dr. Batra felt comforted by his kind gesture and whispered into Parimal's ears, This man woke up within an hour. So? Parimal was confused. How could he? That's not possible, Dr. Batra exclaimed with his eyes wide. Not possible? What do you mean? We all saw him wake up. Parimal went on with his innocent inquiries. Exactly. That's what's bothering me, Parimal. A single dose of that drug takes a man down for 4 to 5 hours at least. You know what? He didn't lose his consciousness after 1 dose. Then I increased it to twice the normal measure. He went dizzy for a while, but was still awake. I gave him 1 more round. A dose of that kind is more than enough to kill a man, and he managed to regain his wits within an hour, Dr. Batra went on explaining. This is a question mark on my knowledge and calibre. I need to find out how he did that, said the determined Dr. Batra. Whatever Dr. Batra said didn't register on the radar of Parimal's brain, and so he got out of it with, Did you tell Dr. Srinivasan? Yes, I did. Perhaps Dr. Srinivasan knows things we aren't aware of. When Om Shatri saw Dr. Shrivansan, he called him by his nickname, Sheena. Cheena? How did he know it? Pramil was shocked. That's the point. How on earth would he know it? A man who knows Dr. Shrivansan's nickname and claims he doesn't remember his own name. Are you on a mission? Shahista was all ears again. Yes, Om Shri nodded. Everyone's face went pale. The deep lines on Dr. Shrivansan's forehead revealed the nature of his thoughts. LSD grew a bit tense, thinking about interrogating a terrorist who was being given such importance that people who were the best in different walks of life had been brought together here, in this isolated facility. Dr. Shahista was equally frightened for once. I knew it. He is Muslim. He looks like one, snapped the proud Abhilash. He had the habit of discriminating against people on the basis of caste and religion. Shista chose to ignore him and went on. What is your mission? Hide and be hidden. Hide what? My belongings. Where do you secure it? In my memories. And in a locker. Who do you protect it for? For this mankind, Om said, with a heavenly smile on his lips. Without being questioned further, Om breathed, No, I am not a terrorist. Shahista had lost her patience. She turned toward everyone else and discovered they were in the same boat, equally jolted. Dr. Shrivansan was on the phone talking to someone. He saw Shahista's face and hung up before snapping. What happened? I didn't put up a question and still he spoke. Who on earth asked him about being a terrorist? Cried Shahista, clearly taken aback. Lisa Samuel DaCosta, Om replied. I was talking to Pramila about the possibility of him being a terrorist, but I wasn't loud, admitted LSD. Pramila nodded in agreement. How come he heard you and not me? Shista's face grew serious in contemplation. LSD didn't know what to say, so she kept quiet for once. It was already past noon when Om Shahista broke the spell yet again. Verbhadra looked at his watch and noted it was 1:45 p.m. He went outside the room to inspect the guards. Meanwhile, in the room, Om locked his eyes with the fear-stricken Dr. Shahista and spoke to her with like a father to his daughter. You don't have to do this to get your answers. I am in your custody. You may tackle me as you wish. Go ahead without terror on your face. I will not harm anyone, and I never did. Trust me, I'll cooperate. Shahista was at a loss for words. Dr. Butcher crossed the room towards Dr. Shrivansan and said, I need your permission to diagnose him, sir. He was more than agitated. Dr. Shrivansan didn't take any initiative to help Dr. Butcher. He was preoccupied with his own work. Shahista left Om and walked towards the group. Yes, Shahista? Inquired Dr. Shrivansan on seeing her approach. Sir, I suggest we try interrogating him without the drugs and hypnotism for once, Shahista pleaded. Dr. Butcher seemed ridiculed by Shahista's request, but chose to remain silent. We may do that. Are you to take the responsibility of authenticating his words? Is it ensured that only the truth is spoken? The amendment Dr. Shrivansan concluded. But this is not helping either, Dr. Shahista reasoned. Please let me diagnose him once, sir. I want a sample of his blood, Dr. Butcher appealed. He is not a lab rat that you can research on, Tej. I cannot allow you that privilege, was all Dr. Butcher got from his high command. Dr. Butcher and Shahista looked at each other with an expression that said, We're in the same boat. With a deep sigh, Shahista said, Okay, sir, then what do we have to do now? Dr. Shrivansan's phone rang. He took it out from his pocket, saw the caller's identity, and grew a bit nervous. All of you take a short break and thereafter prepare for the next session, Dr. Shrivansan in haste. Before attending the call, he strode past them out of the room. Dr. Shrivansan's departure came across relaxation in the atmosphere. A smile swept across LSD's face instantly. Prema looked in Abhilash's direction and then towards LSD. Dr. Butcher was still having a hard time without his answers, and that was troubling him. Likewise, Dr. Shista had her gaze on Om Shastri, who was keenly observing keenly observing the room around him and the people inside it. When he looked at Shahista, she turned away. That instant, the security chief, Verbudra, entered the room with 2 other guards. He echoed in a heavy voice, "Everyone, this way, please," and showed them the door with a wave of his hand. All of them took a couple of minutes to leave the room. Verbudra and Om Shastri were to be alone in the room for an hour. The next room was occupied by the investigators. Dr. Batra was speaking to his family in his native tongue. Premal, LSD, and Abhilash were sitting comfortably around a wooden table. Dr. Shrista chose to be alone for the time being. She sat at another table, scribbling something in a diary. Premal was struggling with his words, LSD with her wires, and Abhilash with his pride. They were engaged in a conversation, talking about their careers and themselves. "Why don't you join us, Dr. Shrista? Let's get to know each other a bit," LSD invited. "Sure, I'll be there in 5 minutes," replied the woman. Since Shahista was senior to them, she knew all about them through their files. She had joined the crew knowing whom she would be working with, but not for how long. She came and sat on the empty seat beside Abhilash. As Dr. Shahista got seated, Abhilash stood up and went to the other side, changing his seat with Premal. Everyone noticed the discrimination and felt its sting, but no one said anything. Dr. Shahista was embarrassed. Dr. Butcher was still on his phone. "What's the diary all about?" asked LSD bluntly, pointing towards the diary in Shahista's hand. "I'm just keeping track of all the usual and unusual happenings of the interrogation. Proves to be beneficial for the case study later," replied Shahista with her calm smile. What unusual happenings?" Premal inquired in his typical manner. "You see, he doesn't ask the usual questions. When he wakes up, he asks worriedly about what and who we are and so on, as if he already knew in his heart that he is going to be caught someday. Maybe he had experienced this before. Maybe he knows what we are looking for," Premal proposed. "Even we aren't fortunate enough to know what we are looking for from him," Shahista said in a disgusted tone. "What other unusual traits does he show?" Premal stammered. "He breaks the spell I cast upon him without any prior signs of breaking it. It's a swift process, as if he was normally sleeping. Snap, and he wakes up," Shahista explained with a click of her fingers. Dr. Batra is also more than concerned about his ability to overcome the effect of his drugs, which usually lasts several hours, Premal remarked. "I personally dread Dr. Batra's presence. Wonder why he is always infuriated and worked up," admitted LSD. "Dr. Batra is a nice man. He is crawling alone through the shadows. That's all," Shahista explained. "Oh, do you know him personally?" LSD kept on. "Yes, we have worked together earlier." "So what's troubling him?" "He is not his usual self. Actually, he's a bit down in the dumps because his wife is on her deathbed. Though he is a renowned doctor, there is not much he can do about it. That's the reason for his disappointment," Dr. Shahista, in an empathetic voice. LSD criticized herself for not trying to understand a situation before forming an opinion about it, and at the same time she envied Shahista for being able to do the same thing so easily. There was a silence for a while, and Shahista pondered over the mental agony which Dr. Batra might be suffering. A wise man comes out of a difficult time wiser than before. Dr. Batra is a wise man indeed, thought Shahista. "Premal, what did Om Shahistri say in Sanskrit?" asked Shahista, changing the subject. Premal replied, "It was a sloka, verse. I didn't fully understand it, but I think he was talking about man's life shrinking with the smooth and speedy passage of time, and he wondered something. I couldn't take it in as he spoke it in a voice too weak to reach me, but if I could hear it once more, I could tell you the exact translation." "I can do that easily. I can make him repeat it," informed Shahistri confidently. "We must record it all for future, shouldn't we?" suggested LSD. "What? Aren't we recording it already?" Premal's surprise was evident in his eyes. At that moment, Dr. Butcher joined in and sat with his head in his palms. "No," replied Shahista. "Why not?" Primrose was shocked beyond explanation. "Because Dr. Shervanson does not want anything to be recorded," Dr. Butcher interjected. "And we are following that?" Primrose ceased being disrespectful. "Being respectful." "Yes, because he is the boss," LSD said, rolling her eyes. "I don't think he is," Abalash contemplated. "What do you mean?" LSD asked. Dr. Butcher and Shahista exchanged glances, and before anyone could pay heed to Abalash's situation, Dr. Butcher interrupted with, "LSD, could you get me some information about someone?" "Sir, with the equipment and devices I am provided with in here, I can give you practically any information about anyone. Their account numbers, passwords, emails, places visited, current location, phone numbers, personal details, every piece of data since they were born," replied LSD confidently as her eyes shone. "Okay then, dig up everything you can about this man, Om Shahistri." And Dr. Butcher, with a hint of satisfaction, Om and Verbhadra had been together in the room for quite some time. Om was tied up as earlier with no change in his position, and Verbhadra was sitting idle at one of the tables. Om Shastri finally broke the silence, saying, "Can I get a glass of water, Mr. Verbhadra?" His voice was husky. Verbhadra noticed. Maybe because of his dry throat, he thought. "Get him a glass of water," he ordered one of the guards without moving at all. "So, for how long have you been working here?" Om tried to start up a conversation. "It's been a while," came the flat and rude reply from Verbhadra. Om inhaled deeply and started smiling. "What do you smile at?" Verbhadra asked, irritated. "It's going to rain soon, and I love the smell of the sound of it," replied Om Shastri, his gaze set upon the minimal sky visible through the ventilator. He then gulped down the water he got from the guard. "Rain? Now? It's summer. Have you lost it?" Verbhadra responded. Verbhadra heard many footsteps in the corridor. He left the room again when everyone else entered, and within a few seconds everyone was back at their original positions in the room. LSD was tripping with enthusiasm as she finally had something to work on. Abalash continuously staring at Om Shastri, his expression unreadable. Om Shastri stared back. Dr. Butcher was prepared for another session. Suddenly he remembered having missed something. He went over to LSD and said in a hushed voice, "Om had also mentioned a locker where he keeps his information safe. Do check about that too." "Yes, sir," said LSD. Dr. Shervanson was back in the lab. He began by scrutinizing it for the presence of all the team members. Dr. Shahista was absent. "Abalash," called out Dr. Shervanson, "look for Dr. Shahista and ask her to get here." Abalash nodded and went straight towards the door, with a disgusted feeling, thinking, "Why me?" He knew where he would find the lady. As expected, Dr. Shahista was in the next room, kneeling, studying her notes. "You still here?" Abalash asked bluntly and reluctantly. "I was just going through the notes I had prepared. This might help in the next." "Dr. Shervanson is expecting you," said Abalash, cutting her off. Shahista nodded. Dr. Shahista and Abalash started walking together just before entering the lab. Shahista said in a strict yet gentle tone, "Abalash, you know so much about Agoris. Let me fill your knowledge gap with one more thing about them. Agoris have a policy of no hatred towards any creature or thing. They believe that that one who hates cannot meditate or reach moksha. We, who always look for reasons to hate others, whether based on religious views, skin color, linguistic choices, political approaches, sexual orientation, gender, race, and whatnot, must learn from them. The bottom line of the story is that I treat people like people and not on the basis of their religion, and I prefer to be treated the same way. Am I clear?" Shista's eyes had a penetrating gaze. Abalash understood her message and gave his assent in a nod. As they entered the lab, they saw, halfway inside, Dr. Butcher talking to Shervanson. "Sir, what will we do if he defies the medicines again?" Dr. Butcher was anxious. "We'll see," replied Dr. Shervanson. Dr. Butcher's words fell on deaf ears.